Snow came early that winter, heavy enough to make the cottonwoods groan under its weight and the fences vanish beneath white drifts. It was the kind of cold that made a man question his choices, his future, and whether the land he'd bet everything on was finally giving up on him. But the letter in. Luke Carver's glove tightened his breath more than the cold did. He stood on the front porch of his failing ranch, breath fogging in the sharp Christmas morning air, watching a lone stagecoach rattle down the frozen road. The horses were coated in frost, their snorts rising like steam from a broken boiler. The driver cracked the reins, pushing them harder than sense allowed. Nobody came out this far unless they had a reason. Luke's hand dropped to the worn rail as the coach jerked to a stop. Its door swung open, and a young woman stepped out, boots sinking into snow that nearly swallowed her ankles. She carried nothing but one travel trunk and a wool shawl wrapped tight around her. Her eyes met his steady, brown, unafraid. A mail-order bride, delivered on Christmas morning. But before we get to the moment, he realized she wasn't at all what he'd expected. We have to go back. Back to the weeks when Luke believed he was watching his life slowly freeze into failure. The fall roundup had gone bad, too many cattle dead from early blizzards, too many debts piling under his name. The bank agent had made it plain as whiskey. One more season like this, and the Carver ranch would be swallowed whole. Luke didn't talk much about it. Didn't have anyone to talk to anyway. He'd been the quiet brother, the one who stayed behind when others sought fortunes elsewhere. The land was his inheritance, his burden, and his promise. Nights by the fire were silent. Mornings came too early. Loneliness settled into the walls like winter frost, which was why, on one of those cold, empty nights, he'd answered a newspaper advertisement he never thought he'd consider. A simple posting sent from a lonely woman far back east, seeking a respectable union, willing to travel, hard-working, kind-hearted, capable. He'd circled that word for a long time before sending the letter. Still, as the stagecoach door closed and the horses shook their manes, Luke felt something unexpected grip him. Not excitement, not relief, not a warning. A sense that this moment would either save him or complicate everything beyond repair. She stepped forward, snowflakes catching on her dark hair. Her voice came out soft, but steady enough to cut through the cold. "Are you, Mr. Carver?" Luke cleared his throat. "I am." She nodded once, almost formally, then waited, not timid, not nervous, just waiting for him to speak like she'd been walking into strange lives her whole life. He lifted her trunk from the snow. It was heavier than any traveler's luggage had a right to be, too heavy for clothes alone. Something shifted inside it, solid and metallic. Luke's brows tightened. A strange chill crawled up his spine. "Long ride?" he asked quietly. She looked up at him with eyes that carried tired storms. "Longer than I care to admit." The wind whistled over the empty corral. A lonely ranch. A desperate man. A Christmas morning bride with secrets in her trunk. "Let's get you inside," Luke said, though unease prickled like needles beneath his coat. He led her toward the house. Her steps were measured, graceful, almost too confident for someone stepping into a stranger's life. Inside, the fire crackled. The room felt suddenly too small. As she removed her shawl, Luke noticed something he hadn't expected: calloused fingertips, like someone who worked with precision tools. A faint ink stain near her thumb, a quiet alertness in her gaze that reminded him more of a scout than a housewife. She stood near the hearth, warming her hands. "I should tell you my name," she murmured. "It's Eliza Hart." Luke nodded. "Welcome to Carver Ranch." Her lips curved a knot, quite a smile, but something close, something cautious. Outside, the wind moaned through the barn slats, carrying a truth Luke didn't yet understand. Eliza Hart had come to be his wife, but she'd also come with a hidden talent, one that would save his ranch in ways he could never have imagined. A soft thud sounded from her trunk, as if reminding him the secret was still locked inside, and the ranch felt less alone, but far less simple. The snow didn't ease up in the days that followed. It fell in long, silent sheets that covered the world in white, softening every sound except the creak of strained timber and the mournful howl of wind through the hollows. Luke Carver woke each morning to a ranch buried a little deeper. Cattle huddled along fences like defeated shadows, and the same woman by his stove, warming her hands before beginning the day's work. Asterisk. Eliza Hart didn't ask for directions. She simply moved. Asterisk. By the second morning, she had located the kitchen tools, scrubbed the dead soot from the unused stove, and found a way to stretch Luke's dwindling supplies into something that tasted better than it had the right to. She moved carefully, deliberately, but never timidly. A woman who'd learned to carve a place for herself wherever she landed. Asterisk. But Luke noticed the details. Asterisk. As she chopped vegetables, her fingers moved with precise rhythm. Asterisk. When she stitched a torn sleeve of his shirt, her needle danced fast, flawless. Asterisk. And when she asked questions about the ranch, they weren't the kind people ask from politeness. They were the kind asked to solve problems. Asterisk. What happened to the North herd? She had asked over breakfast, voice low, eye steady. Asterisk. Luke had blinked. Lost most of M to early snow. Asterisk. And the Southline fence. She continued. Asterisk. His jaw tightened. Collapsed last storm. Haven't had time to fix it. She nodded like she was taking inventory of a wounded patient. But what unsettled him wasn't her competence. It was the sense that she was measuring something deeper. The land, their odds of survival. Asterisk. That night, as he mucked stalls in the freezing barn, his neighbors rode in. Asterisk. To men, bundled in wool coats, smelling of whiskey and old smoke tome. Hargreaves and Miles Barlow, both from the Ridge settlement several miles east. Their boots hit the ground with heavy clumps of frost as they approached Luke with grim looks. Asterisk. Tom spat into the straw. Heard you brought in a mail-order bride. Asterisk. Luke's shoulders stiffened. That's right. Asterisk. Miles's eyes narrowed. You sure that's what she is? Asterisk. Luke paused. Meaning? Asterisk. Miles tipped his hat back, revealing a weather-beaten scowl. Snowed-in stranger shows up with a trunk heavier than a coffin. Folks in town wondering if you know who you're letting into your house. Asterisk. Luke set the pitchfork aside. Eliza's here because I asked her to be. Asterisk. Tom crossed his arms, breath turning to fog. Luke, ain't our business who you marry, but this ranch is barely You bring the wrong kind of trouble here. The bank ain't the only thing knockin'. Asterisk. Luke felt heat crawl into his chest. She hasn't caused trouble. Asterisk. Miles exchanged a look with Tom. Not yet. Asterisk. Their tone held something else, fear disguised as neighborly concern. Superstition woven into survival. Out here, trust was thin, and winter made folks suspicious of anything unfamiliar. Asterisk. Luke's jaw tightened. You done? Asterisk. Tom sighed. We ain't your enemies, Luke. We just know hard times make men desperate. Desperate men make foolish choices. And women with secrets make worse ones, Miles added. Luke stepped closer, boots crunching in frozen straw. Eliza is my wife. I'll handle what comes. Asterisk. Miles studied him for a moment, then mounted his horse, muttering, Hope you can, Carver. Hope you can. The two men rode out, disappearing into the snowfall. When Luke entered the house, Eliza was sitting near the fire, a lantern beside her, the mysterious trunk at her feet. She looked up when the door opened, eyes reading his expression before he said a word. Asterisk. Neighbors? She asked quietly. Asterisk. He nodded. They're curious. Asterisk. Her fingers brushed the latch of her trunk, a soft, almost involuntary motion. Then she withdrew her hand, folding it into her lap. Asterisk. Curious can turn dangerous in a place like this, she murmured. Asterisk. Luke frowned. Why would it? Asterisk Eliza didn't answer right away. Instead, she studied the flames, the shadows dancing across her face. The silence stretched until the room felt smaller, tighter. Finally, she spoke. I didn't lie to you, Luke, but I didn't volunteer everything either. Asterisk, Luke felt a cold slide beneath his ribs. What did you leave out? Asterisk, her eyes lifted to his steady calm. But carrying years, he suddenly realized he didn't know a thing about. Asterisk, the talent I wrote about, she said softly. The one I said made me capable? Asterisk, Luke swallowed. What talent is that? Asterisk, Eliza exhaled slowly, as if preparing him for a truth heavier than the trunk she carried. Asterisk, the kind that can save a ranch, she said, or ruin it depending on who's asking. Asterisk, before he could ask more, a sharp knock hit the front door, 3 hard strikes that echoed like rifle butts on oak. Asterisk, Luke froze. Eliza didn't. Her voice lowered, barely above a whisper. That knock isn't friendly. Luke stepped toward the door, heart thudding. Outside, someone waited in the snow. Asterisk, and the secret Eliza carried was no longer something Luke could ignore. The knocking didn't come again, but that somehow made it worse. 3 sharp strikes that carried authority, then silence thick enough to choke the room. Luke's hand hovered over the door latch, while the wind hissed under the eaves like a warning. Asterisk, behind him, Eliza stood absolutely still, not tense, not fearful, prepared. Luke opened the door slowly. Asterisk, a single man stood in the snow coat, dusted white, breath rolling from him in heavy clouds. He wasn't a neighbor, nor a ranch hand from anywhere nearby. His hat brim was too stiff, his boots too polished, and his eyes too sharp. A lawman's eyes. Evenin', the stranger said, voice calm, measured. You Luke Carver. Asterisk, Luke felt his jaw tighten. That's right. Asterisk, the stranger nodded once. Name's Marshall Rowan Tate. I'm looking for someone. A woman. Asterisk, Luke didn't move, didn't blink. Can't help you with that. Asterisk, Rowan raised a brow, gaze flicking past Luke's shoulder toward the firelight, toward the faint silhouette of Eliza standing inside the house. Asterisk, mind if I step in out of this cold? Rowan asked, though his tone made it clear it wasn't a request. Asterisk, Luke stepped halfway into the doorway, blocking him. House is private. A slow smile tugged at the marshal's mouth. Private, sure. But the law isn't. Asterisk, behind Luke, he felt Eliza approach, not panicked, but with the soft, deliberate steps of someone calculating distances and exits. Asterisk, Rowan shifted his weight. Snow crunched once beneath his boot. I'm searching for a woman known for forgery. Specifically documents, bonds, payroll, papers, talented sort. Slipped away from custody in Illinois. Thought she hopped to Stage West. Luke felt the floor tilt under him. Forgery, documents, a skill that could save a ranch drowning in debt, or destroy one. Asterisk, Rowan continued, eyes fixed on Luke, like a hawk watching a rabbit twitch. You seen anyone like that passin' through? Eliza stepped forward before Luke could speak. Her voice was calm. Marshall. Asterisk, Rowan's gaze snapped to her, assessing, calculating. Well now, you fit the description. Asterisk, Eliza didn't deny it. She didn't tremble. She simply breathed in and said softly, You're late. Asterisk, Rowan blinked, thrown off just long enough for Luke to realize Eliza was not at all the kind of woman he assumed she was. Asterisk, step aside, ma'am, Rowan said, hand drifting toward, the revolver holstered beneath his coat. Asterisk, Luke felt something rise in him, anger or instinct. He wasn't sure, but he moved between them. Asterisk, you got a warrant? Luke asked. Asterisk, Rowan's eyes hardened. I didn't ride through a blizzard to do this polite, Carver. She's coming with me. Asterisk, Eliza's hand touched Luke's sleeve knot, pleading, not frightened. A quiet touch. Let him speak, she whispered. Luke swallowed. Marshall, what exactly do you think she's done? Rowan huffed once. What she has done is outsmart 3 banks. Rewrite bonds clean enough fools thought they were genuine, and put a dent in more payrolls than I care to count. What she's accused of is fraud over state lines. Eliza's voice entered the space like a steady lantern's glow. Men were stealing from widows, and farmers charging interest so high no one could climb out. I forged documents to free them from debts that were killing them. Rowan's jaw flexed. That ain't justice. That's crime. Eliza held his gaze. Sometimes they're the same thing. Luke's breath fogged in front of him. He glanced from Eliza to Rowan, then back to Eliza the woman, who had stepped into his life on Christmas morning with a trunk full of secrets, and hands trained in delicate, dangerous skill. He saw something else, now, too. A woman who believed she had done right. A woman who had run out of places to hide. Rowan took one step forward. Luke instinctively blocked him again. Careful now, Rowan warned. Interfering with the law is a crime of its own. Luke didn't look away. You can't take her tonight. Rowan's eyes narrowed. And why's that? Luke gestured toward the storm beating against the land. Because you won't make it 5 miles in this weather with a prisoner. You know it. I know it. Rowan hesitated just enough for the truth to sink into the air. Eliza stepped beside Luke, her voice low. You can stay until morning. The storm will let up by then. Rowan stared at her, studying her as though trying to understand the shape of her soul. Finally, he stepped back. Fine, I'll take your hospitality, he said reluctantly. But come dawn, he pointed at Eliza. You're leaving with me. The wind howled as the door shut, sealing the 3 of them inside a house too small for this kind of truth. Luke felt Eliza's breath tremble not from fear, but from the weight of everything she'd carried alone. And somewhere out in the storm, another knock waited to fall. Because trouble never traveled alone. The storm settled into one long, low moan around the ranch house wind, dragging across the windows like a restless animal searching for a way in. Inside, lantern light painted the walls in soft gold, flickering over 3 people who understood that dawn would not be kind to any of them. Marshal Rowan Tate sat at the kitchen table, boots thong near the stove, hat resting on his knee. He watched Eliza with the steady patience of a man used to corners. Confessions, and the way guilt loosens in warm rooms. But Eliza. She didn't unravel. She moved quietly through the kitchen pouring coffee, tending fire, checking on the stew simmering low on the stove. Luke could see it clearly now. She wasn't avoiding Rowan. She was waiting for the moment where truth mattered more than survival. Luke leaned against the counter, arms folded, eyes drifting from Rowan to Eliza. The marshal wasn't cruel, just convinced of his duty. And Eliza wasn't innocent, not by law, but Luke could feel something unspoken humming beneath her silence, something heavy. Rowan took a sip of coffee, swallowed, then set the mug down with a soft thud. You know, he said calmly, you could have made a good living the honest way. Someone with your hands could have forged art or drawn maps. Why choose crime? Eliza didn't turn. You call it crime, she murmured. I call it necessity. Rowan shook his head. That's what they all say. Eliza finally faced him. Do they also say they watched widows lose their farms for $20 of interest? That they saw a family forced off their land because the banker forged their signatures and pretended the debt was theirs? Rowan paused. Eliza stepped closer. Not aggressive, just steady. I didn't steal for myself, she continued. I rewrote debts that should never have existed. I gave families back their land, their freedom. Rowan stood, slowly. And you think that makes you some kind of hero? Her eyes, softened not pride, not arrogance. Something sadder. No, It makes me someone who couldn't look away. Luke felt the air shift, like the room itself understood the truth, now carried weight. Eliza reached for her trunk, kneeling beside it. Luke watched with held breath as she undid the latch. The lid lifted, and inside lay tools, fine pens, inks, parchment, seals, stamps, and small metal instruments crafted for detail work. It wasn't a criminal's kit. It was an artist's life. Asterisk, a life sharpened by injustice, pushed into shadows by men with power. Asterisk, she lifted a small stack of folded paper, worn, but carefully protected. Asterisk, these are the last documents I forged, she said. A debt release for a widow who had no one left to fight for her. Asterisk, Rowan's breath escaped in a slow, conflicted sigh. You don't understand the law, Eliza. Paper doesn't change truth. But sometimes truth needs new paper, she whispered. Luke stepped closer without thinking. He wasn't trying to protect her anymore. He simply wanted to understand her fully. Asterisk, what happened to her? He asked quietly. Asterisk, Eliza's hands trembled faintly. The widow. Asterisk, she nodded once. She got her land back. But word got out. And before she could thank me, she was killed by the same banker I exposed. Asterisk, Rowan's jaw clenched. Luke felt something cold slide through him, a grief that didn't belong to him, but suddenly felt shared. Asterisk, Eliza's voice softened, breaking just slightly around the edges. I couldn't stay. I ran, not because I was afraid of the law, but because I knew if I stayed, someone else would die trying to protect me. She looked at Luke, now direct, unguarded. When I answered your advertisement, I wasn't looking for a husband. I was looking for a place where no one knew my name. Somewhere I could be quiet, useful, safe. Asterisk, Luke swallowed hard. Eliza, you've been carrying all this alone. Asterisk, Rowan rubbed a hand across his face, no longer the unshakable lawman who'd stormed in from the cold. I didn't know about the widow, he muttered. I just knew the reports. Paperwork don't tell the whole story. Asterisk, Eliza's voice broke into a whisper. Paper never tells the whole story. Asterisk, the three stood in a heavy silence. Snow slapped softly against the windows. The fire crackled. Asterisk, finally, Rowan exhaled. Tomorrow morning, I still have to make a decision, but I'll make it knowing the truth, not the pieces they fed me. Asterisk, Eliza nodded once, accepting the impossible weight of it. Asterisk, Luke stepped closer, not touching her, just near enough to share the warmth of the fire. Asterisk, you saved people, he said softly. Maybe you can save this place too. Asterisk, Eliza's eyes flickered, wet, but strong. If you want me to. Outside, the storm began to ease. Inside, the distance between three strangers began to soften. Asterisk, but dawn was coming. Asterisk and dawn demanded decisions. No one would walk away from unchanged. Dawn crept slowly across the snow-covered plains, brushing the ranch with a pale, forgiving light. It was the kind of morning where the cold felt clean, sharp enough to sting the lungs, yet strangely full of promise. The storm had passed in the night, leaving behind a world smoothed and quieted, as though the land itself were holding its breath. Asterisk, inside the ranch house. Luke Carver stood by the window, watching the sun climb over the ridge. Behind him, the soft sounds of the kitchen stirred, Eliza making coffee. Rowan moving with the weary steadiness of a man whose mind had been restless long before sleep ever found him. Asterisk, Luke turned. Rowan was already by the table, coat on, hat in hand, a man preparing himself for duty, even when he wasn't sure what duty was anymore. Asterisk, Eliza entered the room, hands wrapped around two steaming mugs. She set one in front of Rowan without a word. He nodded, accepting it like a truce he wasn't sure he had earned. Asterisk, for a long moment, the three stood in silence. Asterisk, finally, Rowan drew in a breath. Storm's cleared. Roads will be open soon. Asterisk Eliza didn't answer. She simply stood there, hands clasped in front of her. Chin lifted, but eyes soft, like someone ready to accept whatever consequence. Finally stepped forward. Asterisk Luke stepped beside her, not touching, not claiming, just standing with her. Rowan's gaze flicked between them, noting the unity that had taken root in a matter of days. Asterisk, he sighed. Eliza Hart, you're wanted in Illinois for forgery. That hasn't changed. Asterisk Eliza nodded once. Steady, I know. Asterisk, and I'm sworn to uphold the law. That hasn't changed either. Luke's chest tightened. Rowan looked down at his hat, turning it in his hands. But last night, I heard more truth than I ever saw in any report. He lifted his eyes to Eliza. If the law can't see the shape of a person's heart, then maybe the law ain't the only thing worth listening to. Asterisk Eliza blinked, a single tear gathering but refusing to fall. Asterisk Rowan continued, voice low. I can take you in, tie you to that saddle and ride back east. They'd lock you up for years, maybe longer, and all those families you helped. They'd never know the price you paid for 'em. Eliza's hands tightened together, Rowan's voice softened, surprising even himself. I can write a report saying you died in the storm, lost track of you in the blizzard, body never recovered. Asterisk Luke's breath caught. Eliza inhaled sharply. Asterisk Rowan placed his hat on the table. But if I do that, you give up running. No more forgery, no more hiding. You stay here, quiet, useful, like you said. Live a life instead of fleeing from one. Asterisk Eliza stared at him, stunned. You'd do that? For me? Asterisk Rowan shook his head. Not for you. For the folks you helped. For the truth they couldn't put on paper. Asterisk Luke stepped forward. Marshal, I won't forget this. Asterisk Rowan smirked faintly. You better not. This is the sort of favor a man only does once. Asterisk Eliza wiped at her eyes with the back of her sleeve. I don't know how to thank you. Asterisk Rowan lifted his coat from the chair. Live right. That'll be thanks enough. Asterisk Luke walked him to the door. Rowan paused before stepping out into the pale morning dot. Asterisk Carver, he said quietly. She's got a gift, dangerous gift. Sure, but one that could help you set this place back on its feet. Don't waste it. And don't let the past chew her up again. Asterisk Luke nodded. I won't. Asterisk Eliza joined them at the doorway. Rowan looked at her one last time, not as a marshal judging a fugitive, but as a weary man recognizing another soul who'd been carrying too much alone. Asterisk be free, he said softly. Asterisk with that, he stepped outside, mounted his horse, and rode into the vast white morning until he was only a small, dark figure. Disappearing across the plains, Asterisk Luke closed the door slowly. The house felt different, now lighter, warmer, like a burden had been lifted off every beam and nail. Asterisk Eliza stood there, breath trembling, but her eyes finally cleared. Asterisk, you don't have to keep me, she whispered, not out of obligation. Asterisk Luke stepped toward her. Eliza, I don't want to keep you. He paused, voice softening. I want you to stay. Asterisk, her breath hitched. And if my past follows me again? Asterisk Luke reached out, gently touching her hand for the first time. Then we face it together. Asterisk, her fingers curled around his, not desperate, not afraid, but steady. Outside, the snow glowed gold under the rising sun. Inside, two lives broken in different ways found a quiet beginning. Asterisk, not a perfect one, not a simple one, but a true one. Asterisk, the kind the West remembers.